You know, I have been reading comics for a long time, and I will admit, there are some stories out there I do technically miss because, growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s, collecting was a tad bit difficult. It got easier over the years, but, there's still some stories out there that I had completely forgotten about or just completely missed. And this one is one of those stories where I had just completely missed. And that would be X-Men issue number 46 and issue number 47. A two-part story arc where we are being introduced to the X-Babies. And really, with the cover of the first issue, you would believe okay, we're going to see our heroes basically turn into babies, right? No. Instead, it's a whole different kind of an idea. But getting into the opening pages of the storyline, we really pick up with Gambit and Bishop. Now, these two characters, they're going out for the night. Now, for Gambit, it's really more the idea that the dude needs a break because he has gone through a lot in a very short period of time. He had Rogue being able to go into his mind after kissing him, and she saw his dark secrets. And so she left the X-Men, left him behind, but also he was somewhat injured as well. So for Gambit, he has gone through a lot in a very short period of time. Now for Bishop, it's really more of the idea the dude is out of time. With them not really being able to go back home, he kind of needs a break from the X-Men to kind of live a little. And so you have Gambit and Bishop go to a club where apparently Gambit is well known of, but also kind of like the guys there, security team, they want to make sure they keep their eyes on him because Gambit is a thief. But now we have to transition over to Jean Grey. Now, for Jean Grey, it's really more of her just being out trying to buy a gift for her niece and nephew. Now, while trying to do that, we see that Bobby Drake, aka Iceman, is with her. The reason why Scott's not there because Scott hates the idea of shopping. But for Bobby, it's really more of yes, he's there to help out, but he also has a problem going on for himself. And he believes that Jean Grey can most likely help him with this certain problem with her abilities. Now, while you have the two characters talking to one another, we see that they're being watched by other people. But the problem is we have no idea who they are, but they know Jean Grey and Iceman very well. But somewhere in the middle of America, we do pick up with Senator Kelly. Now, for Senator Kelly, he's with a team right now as they try to investigate what happened at this facility. And what I mean by the statement is that the entire team that was working there had just disappeared, and no one knows where they are at the moment. Now, for Kelly, he does walk over to a bunch of computer screens. And when he does, they all say the same thing over and over and over again, and that would be Onslaught. So yes, we are now continuing to build up to the next big crossover we're going to cover soon on the channel. Now, as we jump back over to Bishop and also Gambit, we have to get reminded that when it comes to Gambit, Bishop did not trust the guy at all. And here's the reason why. Because in Bishop's timeline, it was well known that the X-Men were betrayed by one of their own. And the one person who has survived in Bishop's timeline to witness all of that was Gambit. Now, technically, all we knew was his last name, and that is it. But come on now, it has to be Gambit. And so for Bishop, he's kind of like, you're known in the future as the person who had witnessed the X-Men being betrayed. But at the same time for Bishop, he still believes that it was Gambit who was the one who had betrayed the X-Men. Now, for Gambit, he does try his best to make a case here that he's not that person, that technically he cared for the X-Men too much to actually betray them. But for Bishop, it's kind of hard to believe in that. Now, while you have those two characters talking to one another, we do learn that there is commotion happening in the club between a few people. And the reason why, because you have each person blaming somebody else for touching them behind their backs or underneath the tables, doing different things they don't like to be done to one another, except both parties are technically innocent. That in reality, you have a third party causing all these commotions in the club, and that would be the X-Babies. Now, this is not really their first appearance ever in Marvel Comics. They had actually appeared in the earlier storyline, X-Men Annual, I want to say issue number 12, because the first time we had the X-Babies, it was our heroes who were turned into X-Babies. But this time, they are really a group of characters from the Mojoverse. And for Gambit and also Bishop, they're not going to be the only ones dealing with the X-Babies. That matter of fact, so will Jean Grey and Iceman, because with those two characters, you have Iceman being able to ask Jean Grey for help. And we kind of find out that he wants Jean Grey to use her abilities to read his mind, to kind of see if there is any traces of Emma Frost still left inside of him. And let me explain, because in an earlier storyline that we had covered, you had Emma Frost in the body of Bobby Drake. And when she did that, she kind of discovered how powerful Bobby Drake truly is. And that right there is a major problem, because for Bobby, he never knew how powerful he truly was. It was kind of embarrassing for him that for Emma to be the one to discover his true potential. But also he wants to make sure that she is officially out of his body. But while you have Jean Grey try to do that for him, well, more X-Babies do appear. That will be Storm and also Iceman in a form of young children. But then out of nowhere, you have Marvel trying their best to build up to the idea of the return of Magneto. And here's the reason why. Because out of nowhere, we jump in the middle of this random town, this random area, and we see Magneto with a random woman, where for Magneto, he does not remember anything at all about himself or anything about his past. And so he's kind of like just out there with a clean slate of mind to figure out who he truly is. But let's go ahead and kind of explain who the X-Babies are, because just in case we have anybody trying to get in the comics, they don't know the whole idea of the X-Babies. When it came to the X-Men, once they were able to leave the Mojoverse once again, for Mojo, he hated the idea that he lost his big entertainment for his dimension. And so what he did was he created different versions of the X-Men to kind of use those versions to keep entertainment going in his dimension. So for example, there was a gender swap version of the X-Men in the 80s. There was also an animal version of the X-Men as well. And of course, you had the X-Babies. Now for Mojo, he believed that technically the X-Babies were not worth anything at all, and he wanted to kill them. But by this point, Mojo is no longer around. Instead, you now have Longshot and also Dazzler in charge of the Mojoverse. But here's the thing, because there are still two characters who went out there to hopefully get rid of the X-Babies. And guys, I am going to mispronounce their names so badly, because I feel like it's Gog and also Magog, but I could be wrong. But they are a father and son combo who are coming after the X-Babies to make sure that they are officially killed off. Now, as we dive into X-Men issue number 47, it's really more of us now seeing the X-Babies on the run. Like, they're trying their best to just get away from the two characters who had followed them from the Mojoverse. Now, while trying to get away, they do run into random people kind of wondering like, hey, why are these children in the middle of the city by themselves trying to run away? Like, who is possibly chasing after them? But before you have the X-Babies being able to fully explain what's going on, Gog and Magog appear once again to hopefully kill off the X-Babies. Now for Bishop and also Gambit, those two characters got their butt kicked between the two chapters. And so we see them right now trying to get back up after getting their butts handed to them by Gog and Magog. Now for Bishop, he wants to chase after them, but for Gambit, he wants to finish their conversation from earlier, because again, he wants to establish that even though in Bishop's future, he is known as the Witness, and even though Bishop does believe that down the road that Gambit will betray the X-Men, for Gambit, he's saying, I want you to know right here and now, there's no way I will betray the X-Men. And the reason why, because I care for them way too much to do that to them. Now for Bishop, he heard what Gambit said, but in his mind, he's kind of like, yeah, you can say whatever you want to say, but right now, I still believe the complete opposite. Now, for Bishop and also Jean Grey, they technically did not deal with the X-Babies the last time they appeared in X-Men comics. And so for Jean Grey and also Bobby, they can't believe what they're currently seeing. But Jean Grey read the minds of Storm and Iceman, the X-Babies, and kind of realized that they're technically real beings that were created in the Mojoverse. But either way, you do now have Jean Grey and Bobby trying to play as babysitters. But as you jump back over to Bishop and Gambit, you still have those two characters trying their best to fight against Gog and Magog. Now, technically, they're getting their butts handed to them. But luckily for our heroes, not really luckily, because even though the X-Babies are there, you still have Gog and Magog just kicking their butt left and right. But you do have Jean Grey and Iceman appear as well. But like I said earlier, Gog and Magog is just too powerful, so even with Jean Grey, Iceman, Bishop, Gambit, and the X-Babies, these two characters are just way too powerful. And so it does seem like that one, Bishop, is gonna die, but also the X-Babies are gonna die here as well. Like no one nearby can officially stop these two characters. Until you have Dazzler appear. Now remember, the last time we saw Dazzler, she was with Longshot, and that was back in Jim Lee days on the X-Men, issue number 10 and issue number 11, I want to say. Now, when it came to Longshot and Dazzler, they begun the process of trying to free the Mojoverse, because with Mojo no longer being around, it kind of left the door open for those two characters to achieve something in that dimension. And so right now, with a whole political change happening, as soon as she appears, Gog and Magog, they begin to kneel down and praise her as their queen, because technically she is now the new ruler of that reality, with Longshot really trying to accomplish the whole goal of becoming the ruler of that reality. But either way, you do have Dazzler say, listen, these kids are under my protection. And so with her being there, the X-Babies' lives are saved. Now here's the thing, because the last time we saw Dazzler, she was pregnant. And so you have Jean Grey kind of stop Bobby from asking her about her child. Now this storyline will not be explored until many years later in X-Men comics, because, well, you did have a lot of change happen over the years where some writers were not really able to kind of pick up where her storyline had left off at. But either way, you do have Dazzler, Gog and Magog, and the X-Babies go back over to the Mojoverse. But the very last page of this book kind of leads into a bigger storyline we're going to cover down the road. The whole idea of the return of Sabretooth, in a way, possibly, because you do have Boom Boom and Charles Xavier meeting up with one another. Now, when they do, it's really more Charles saying he had decided on what to do with Sabretooth. And this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.